Okay, real brief. Well, let me throw this up. Everybody can get there. Get your Bibles open. We're going to be looking at Exodus 25, 10 through 22. And as you're finding your way to Exodus 25, 10 through 22, I want to ask, we're going to be done with Exodus probably in about 4 or 5 weeks. And so I just want to open it up for if anybody has a book or something that they want to look at and study. I'm open to think about it, pray about it. Doesn't necessarily mean we'll talk about it, but if you have a suggestion or something that you'd like to look at, you're welcome to make that known. It's possible we'll look at that after we finish Exodus. Does anybody have anything right now that they're thinking they'd like to study or look at? Esther, that's a good one. Esther is a very good one. I preached through Esther a couple of years back now, but yeah, that's a good one. Anybody else? Joshua. Yeah, Joshua. Probably a lot of Old Testament, sounds like, huh? Esther and Joshua and Ruth and all of that. All right. Keep that in mind and let me know if you have something that you'd like to look at over the next couple of weeks as we finish up Exodus. All right. So Exodus 25, 10 through 22 says this: they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, a cubit and a half its breadth, and a cubit and a half its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold. Inside and outside shall you overlay it. You shall make on it a molding of gold around it. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it and put them on its 4 feet, 2 rings on one side of it and 2 rings on the other side. You shall make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. You shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry the ark by them. The poles shall remain in the rings of the ark. They shall not be taken from it. And you shall put it into the ark, you shall put into the ark the testimony that I shall give you. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold, 2 cubits and a half shall be its length, and a cubit and a half its breadth. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Hammered work shall you make of them. And the 2 ends of the mercy seat, make 1 cherub on the one end and 1 cherub on the other. Of 1 piece with the mercy seat shall you make the cherubim on its 2 ends. The cherubim shall spread out their wings above, overshadowing the mercy seat with their wings. Their faces one to another. Towards the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubim be. And you shall put the mercy seat on the top of the ark. And in the ark you shall put the testimony that I shall give you. There I will meet with you. And from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubim that are on the ark of the testimony, I will speak with you about all that I will give you in commandment for the people of Israel. All right, so how was the Ark of the Covenant made? How was the Ark of the Covenant made? Very specifically, yeah. In fact, there's some repetition that goes on as well. Detail wasn't like God didn't say, well, just make some kind of a box, however you want. He was. Like it's also made not really touched. Why would you say that? Because it's got rings that it holds on the poles that doesn't touch. Yeah, and the poles are never to be removed, right? Yeah, it's not meant to be touched. What's that emphasizing that it's not to be touched?
The holiness of God.
Yeah. Separateness, right? Holiness is the concept of being separate and apart. And God is completely holy and separate. There's a purity, there's a morality and all of that, but there's a differentness that goes on. And you'll notice that throughout, if you read through the rest of Exodus and all the detailed elements that go into the tabernacle, later on the temple, you'll notice that there's all this detail that goes into it, but it's all meant to be separated for a specific purpose, holy unto the Lord, separated. Absolutely. So good eye to pick that out. How else is it made? What are some of the specifics?
Specific wood.
Okay, there's a specific kind of wood. Yeah, there's specific size. What's that? What does anybody know what a cubit is? Yeah. Yeah, it's about 18 inches. That's right, the cubit. And of course, it'd be slightly different depending on how big your forearm is. But yeah, absolutely. Very, very good. Good Bible students. Yes, everything. Yeah, the cherubs are facing a certain way. It's made of a specific kind of wood. What else? It's overlaid with gold, right? There's gold that goes on there. Absolutely. So why would the ark, why was the ark made of gold? What does gold symbolize? Value. Yeah, it was a precious metal back then. It's precious metal today. So definitely there's a value to it. What else? It's more than just valuable. That's true.
It's pure.
There's a purity to it, right? We often talk about refining gold in fire, and there's a purity to it. Absolutely. That's there. That's part of it. What else?
Makes me think like the streets of gold in heaven.
Okay. Streets of gold in heaven. Yeah, it kind of reminds you of that concept.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Hadn't thought about that, but that is absolutely correct. Later on, when you get the temple is built and it's got these white stones that are massive, and it's got certain parts of it that have gold, and it would shine. If you were on like the Mount of Olives or something like that, you would overlook the mountain, the temple, and if the sun hit it just right, it would sparkle back. And yeah, it's absolutely, so it's valuable. There's a purity element to it. It's valuable. There's also the idea of, and you might not think about this, but there's a connection with eternal, because you can heat gold in a fire, but it doesn't go away, but you burn off impurities and things of that nature. So sometimes the Bible will talk about being purified like gold, refined in a fire. The concept is there's some kind of a purity that goes on with it, but there's also something that's related to the eternal nature of God, in a sense. Does gold tarnish? No, so there would be that purity, that eternal nature kind of thing. Now we know, all elements, can decay and all that eventually, but there's some of that there. And obviously there's an issue of royalty with it as well, isn't there? From ancient times, people have made all kinds of things for kings and queens and royalty of gold and precious metals and those kinds of things.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
It sounds like they're supposed to get the occasional wood and stuff, but is the gold just there for them? Did God just supply that?
He did, but he did it in a specific way.
When they left Egypt, they were told to gather from the Egyptians.
That's right.
They willingly gave it up.
That's right. They would go to their neighbors and ask for these things, clothing and silver and gold. So God, let's not fight. So God did provide it for them, but he provided it for them. And the Bible will talk about Israel plundering the Egyptians. And when he came out, he brought them out with wealth. If you remember the Genesis study, Abraham goes down into Egypt and he comes out richer than when he went down. That is a foreshadowing of what God was going to do with the nation of Israel as a whole. They were going to go down, but they were going to come out richer than they went down in a sense. So absolutely. So God's providing for them, but he did it through a very special way. He made however he did it, he made the Egyptians favorable to them, probably through the plagues, right? They were ready to get rid of these guys. Oh, you want something? Here, get out. I'd be saying that anyways, get out. So yeah, there's royalty, there's value, there's this eternal aspect, there's a purity, there's a beauty, all of this. Now, could God have could God have had them use anything to create this box? Because it's basically a box, right? He could have. He could have. So there's a specific reason why he does it. And all of these are part of that element. It's a bigger picture than simply, oh, it's a precious metal. There's something that communicates. Because these people aren't going to be taking this as collateral when they go into the land or something. That, you know, this is communicating something to the people.
I think it's also just a little bit of a lesson in obedience.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Kind of just what I think of is, you know, he was very specific with dimensions and wood and different things when the ark was built too.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And that's a good point to bring out. God is very specific a lot of times. Sometimes he's general, but a lot of times he wants things done a specific way. You'll find that in the laws. God will say, I don't want you to eat certain animals. I want your clothing to be made this way and not that way. I don't want you to boil, an infant calf or whatever in its mother's milk. I don't want you to do these things. And sometimes we can look back and we can say, there's scientific reasons for that. Why shouldn't they, keep pigs? Well, pigs are not the cleanest animal. They are traveling people right now. They have to be able to move around. They didn't have boots that were made of rubber so they could go through slop and not get feet funguses and diseases, right? So they had to be able to move. So there's a lot of scientific reasons. Pork can go bad without knowing it, and you can get sick. But then there's some things that we just don't know why. God says, do this. And even today, people are like, have no clue. There's nothing scientifically that we know of. There's no reason other than God said to do it. And so there's an obedience that has to happen. And we should be the same way. I don't know if you've ever heard, but I've heard people question, why do I need to be baptized? Why do I need to be immersed? I believe in Jesus. I confessed him in my heart and all of that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, sometimes the best answer is just because God said to do it that way. Like, we can have all the discussion we want, but at the end of the day, we may not fully understand the reason behind why God is saying to do something. Our response, their response is trust and obey. So there's an obedience. And absolutely, that's going on there as well. Now, what was to go inside the ark? What was to be placed inside, according to verse 16? The testimony, absolutely. Well, that is the question. What's yours say? It says something.
No, I will meet with you and give you all my commands.
Okay, so there's commands, right? Well, he's going to meet them above the mercy seat in the midst of the cherubim. He's going to meet there, and it's going to be Moses who's going to see all that. But something is going to be placed inside us, the testimony. What is the testimony? It is, yeah. It's the 10 Commandments. It's going to be the tablets, the stone tablets, that Moses is going to receive directly from the hand of God. They're meant to go in there. And we know that as the 10 Commandments. Why is the testimony to be kept in the ark? Because this is a box, it's going to be in there. This is not something, now remember, this is going to be in the Holy of Holies. It's going to be in the tabernacle. And in the tabernacle, there's two separate, it's a tent. The tabernacle is a tent. In the tent, there's going to be two rooms. There's going to be an outer room and an inner room. The inner room is called the Holy of Holies. The ark is going to be in the Holy of Holies. How many people are supposed to go in the Holy of Holies? One. Yeah, one, the high priest. Now, Moses is going to be able to do this early on and commune with God a bit more than anybody else. But there's the high priest once a year, and he's the only one. So it's not like putting the 10 Commandments in the ark is going to be for everybody to see, right? It's not going to be on display like, oh, come see what God has done. This is going to be in a special place. So why is it in there?
Then you just know the importance.
Isn't it like a contract or a covenant?
Yes, yes, it's a contract, it's a covenant. Absolutely.
I mean, we keep a copy of our Declaration of Independence in Washington, D.C., and it's an important document. And I think it's intended to be a contract between the people and God through the high priest. The high priest is
Yes.
representative of the people.
That's right. So what is the symbolism, or what is the importance? What is it communicating that it's in the ark? It's a covenant, it is. But why keep it there? What's going on with that? Why do we keep a copy of the Declaration of Independence in Washington? It could be destroyed. So let's keep it safe. That's part of it. We're going to keep it nice and safe. There's a holiness aspect to it. There's a reminder of the covenant. There's a reminder, in a sense, between God and man, as not as if God is going to forget, but it's in the presence of God that he has a covenant with them. And the people are going to know this, even though they're not going to see it. They're going to know that we have a contract, in a sense. That's what a covenant is. We have a covenant with God, and the covenant, the stipulations of the covenant, in a sense, are in the very presence of God. He's not going to forget. The people aren't supposed to forget. They're supposed to remember. So again, God's not going to forget, but there's symbolism here. There's something deeper going on where people are recognizing, just like with why we keep the Declaration of Independence in Washington. Washington is a symbol of something, isn't it? What's that? It's democracy. It's freedom. It's seat of power. There's all that. I mean, you could keep a copy of the Declaration of Independence in this building in Park Hills, but Park Hills doesn't have that symbolism, right? There's really no difference. It's a place in the United States.
And it's safe, isn't it? In our Constitution, isn't it
It
sealed
is.
off?
Yeah, it's going to be sealed off. It's going to be safe.
Crypt or something where it's kept.
I'm pretty sure it's kept safe. Yeah. We could keep it safe here too, though.
Oh,
Right? But there is an importance. Sometimes, I don't know if you ever do this, but sometimes we discount the importance of symbolism. And I think we can see that in our patriotism, in our pride of being American, some people more than others, but there's symbolism. We have a flag. Doesn't matter what country you live in, you have a flag. There's a symbol of something there in the flag. There's a symbol in the Declaration of Independence. There's symbolism in celebrating certain holidays. What about the 4th of July? Is there symbolism there? Yeah, more so for some than others, but sometimes we discount, or we can be in danger of discounting the issue of symbolism. And there is some deepness to that, and God is using these things to teach his people a lot of different things, but to teach them. So yes, very good. All right, we talked about this, but what are the creatures that are on top of the ark? Cherubim. Why is it cherubim? Does anybody know what the im at the end is? Just out of curiosity.
More than one.
Yeah, it's plural. In Hebrew, the I am is plural. So you have Elohim versus El. And El is the word for God. Elohim is the plural of God. Cherubim is plural. So you wouldn't say cherubims. We might, but that would be wrong.
Or I heard it, or I don't know where I got this.
Yeah.
That the cherubim are not what we think of when we think of cherubs today.
You are very correct.
I think they're kind of scary, aren't they?
You are correct. What is the common idea of a cherub today?
A baby angel.
Yeah, right there. Just slap some wings on that one there, and there's it, right? Mom's saying, well, I don't know about that, but but yeah, it's a baby, and it's got wings on it, and that's what we think of as a cherub. Now, I have no clue. It'd be interesting to see where that idea came from, who invented that, because that's not biblical. If you ever saw, at least in vision, if you ever saw a cherub described the way the Bible describes a cherub, what's that? It's ugly. You would be.
Do something, not, because nobody was buying it.
Well, that's true. Nobody would buy it. You shouldn't buy it either, because it's but yeah, it's not cute. You would be terrified if you saw a cherub the way the cherubs are described in the Bible. Yes.
What did it to guard?
Fierce. That's right. That's right.
Where is it described in the Bible, James?
If you look at Ezekiel, there's the cherubs are described. Well, you got the cherubim and the I can't remember the other name of the angelic beings, but anyways, in Isaiah and in Ezekiel, and then there's a discussion in Revelation of what some of those are. But yes, if you look at Ezekiel chapter 1, I believe, you got the description of the cherubs, the cherubim, the plurals there. What do the cherubs symbolize? What do they do? What do they symbolize? They're certainly real beings. The Bible talks about them as real beings. But what do they do, or what do they symbolize?
The one at the Garden of Eden was kind of a guard.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So we first see the Garden of Eden when Adam and Eve are kicked out. There's a flaming sword and the cherubs there. The cherubim symbolize, or their function biblically is as protectors, in a sense, guards of God's holiness, purity, and honor. Does God need the cherubs to fight for him? No, but that seems to be their role. There's a function there, and that's where you get, and the next question was going to be, where else do we see the cherubs in the scriptures? And I gave you some, and Genesis is one. They are if you read Ezekiel chapter 1, in Ezekiel 1, you get this image of the War Chariot of God. What's being described there with the wheel inside a wheel and all of this is a fiery, fearful chariot. And the one who rides that is Yahweh. Yahweh is riding this massive chariot. He is a warrior God in that vision. It's scary. But these are meant to be seen as the protectors of God's holiness, his righteousness, his purity, his honor. And so you've got them guarding the way back to the Garden of Eden, into the tree of life and all of that. Why are they there? What is that? What are they doing there? What's the cherub doing guarding the way back into the garden? They're
He's keeping them from coming out.
Yeah. Guarding the presence of God. There's a separation that happens between man and God, isn't that right? Kicked out of the garden. We see that God walked in the garden in the cool of the day. Text says that, right? There was a real presence of God walking with Adam and Eve. Sin enters the picture, they're kicked out, and there is a guardian cherub guarding the way. Now that image is going to continue to be seen. We see it here in the ark, but does anybody know what's woven into the curtain that separates the holy from the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle and the tomb? The cherubs, symbolizing the Garden of Eden, symbolizing that the way back into the presence of God is hindered, that there is a problem, there is a separation, and they are, quote unquote, guarding the way back into the very presence of God. Go ahead. That's right. That's right. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Those are all important details. It's from top to bottom, not bottom to top. Why? God is the one, in a sense, who's tearing it, because Jesus it's at the death of Christ, isn't it? The death of Jesus, the way back into the presence of God now, it's back to Eden. Symbolically back to Eden. So you follow the cherubs throughout. They're very important because they're a constant reminder of the sinfulness of man, that man has broken faith with God, and there has to be a separation. When Jesus comes on the scene, the separation is now removed. That's important to keep that picture in your mind. And as you read through the Bible, you'll notice those over and over again. Okay. Yeah, there's a number of places you can go through and look. And we've talked about those. Why did Israel need the ark? Well, do they need the ark?
Well, yes.
Yes. Why do they need the ark?
It goes with them in their journey.
They needed reassurance that God was continuing to be in their presence and strengthen them and guide them and get them through their situation they're in.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. They needed a constant reminder of the very presence of God. They also needed a reminder of the holiness of God. God is different and separate, which means you must respect and honor him. There is something they needed to, right? This ark goes with them. The presence of God is with them. God is going to speak with them with the ark and all of that, Moses, and we'll see all that later. He's going to walk with them. He's going to be with them, but there's also a separateness. Not anybody can just go into the Holy of Holies until Jesus. And now we have direct access back into the very presence. We don't need a high priest because we have a high priest who is both the one who is the sacrifice and the one who offers the sacrifice, the one who gives his blood to open up the way. So that's important. We'll see that. But they needed it as a constant reminder that God is with them. Over and over and over again, they needed to be reminded God is with them and God is holy and God is separate, and all of that stuff is there. We need to remember that we are both, humans are physical and spiritual beings. We're not just one or the other. We live and experience life both physically and spiritually, don't we? So this is a physical and a spiritual reminder for them. Do we have something physically and spiritually that we do as a constant reminder of the presence of God and some of these big truths? The Lord's Supper. Somebody says, why do we need to eat the Lord's Supper? Isn't it just cracker and juice? And, it's bigger than that, isn't it? It's deeper than that. God could have done it any way he wanted, but he gave us something as a physical, spiritual reminder. When we sit down to the supper, it's a physical act and a spiritual act. When they built this ark and they saw it and they saw the temple, the tabernacle, and it was physical. They needed that physical reminder, but it was also spiritual as well. They lost sight of the spiritual aspect of the ark, didn't they? At a certain point, they started to look at the ark as a magic talisman, didn't they? Anybody remember them going out into battle thinking the ark of God is with us? That means we're going to win the battle, even though our hearts are far from him, and the ark gets captured. God is saying something with that, because God could have prevented that from happening, but he's saying, you missed the point. Can we get to the point where we get up on Sunday morning, we get to the supper, and we lose the spiritual aspect of the physical emblems that we are participating? Could we get there? Sure we could. It becomes just a physical thing we do, devoid of the spiritual nature. It's got to be hand in hand. It's got to be both. It's got to be both. All right. I am rambling on here. I got to get going.
You're pushing 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm trying to get done. Thanks for getting on me. All right. Man, you could see I didn't spell check this. How should we live in light of the fact that God dwells with us? Because the reality is, and I rushed through it because we are at time here, God does dwell in a temple today, doesn't he? Both the church corporately and us individually. So in light of the fact that God dwells with us personally, individually, this is the homework question. I want you to take it home.
Says we are the temple of God.
You are correct. That's right. We are the temple of God, both collectively as the church and individually. That's right. So the Spirit of God dwells in us. So in light of that, I want you to think about that this week. I want you to go home and I want you to ask yourself the question, in light of that, how should we live? What should our lives be looking like? What should my day be like? What should my attitude be like? What difference does it make that God indwells me and is with me throughout all of my days? Think about that. Take that home. Any last thoughts, questions, comments, concerns before we close?